And good afternoon. Welcome to Life Unrehearsed. I'm Matt Del Vecchio, specializing in home care, downsizing in the senior living industry. Thank you for tuning in to Life Unrehearsed, where we try to provide families and their loved ones with resources and advice throughout their aging process at a time when our healthcare system, well, it's really stretched to its limits these days. Thank you for joining us. What a gorgeous Sunday afternoon. Coming up on the first half of Life Unrehearsed, the importance of protection mandates. We're going to be discussing why they are so important as we age and what's involved in making a protection mandate become active. And how do we keep our brains healthy? You might be surprised to find out that brain health can be tied to our upbringing. And on the second half of Life Unrehearsed, keeping fit with a YouTube sensation and her 85-year-old mother. And we're going to be wrapping up the show discussing the crucial role of estate planning and making the settling of an estate a little less stressful. Well, thank you for joining me this afternoon. All right. As we age, the importance of getting our legal papers in order becomes extremely important. One of those crucial documents is called a protection mandate. Well, to help guide us through protection mandates and the homologation process, I'd like to bring in clinical social worker Stephanie Geller, team lead for Lianas Psychosocial Assessment. Stephanie, welcome back to Life Unrehearsed.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, for joining us. We always try to bring up some important legal documents on Life Unrehearsed. One of them is a protection mandate. So you can let our listeners know, what is a protection mandate?
That's a good question. So protection mandates are actually only in Quebec, but what they are is a document where a person, when they're able to make their own decisions for the names of the people that they want to represent them in the event of their incapacity. So this is what you're going to be using. This is what's going to go to court. And I'm sure you might be explaining the process, but this is how it works. You're going to name the people at the time that you are capable to make those decisions.
Interesting. So it's not a power of attorney. Sometimes they get mixed up. Power of attorney will help make you pay bills for a loved one, but a protection mandate, in case you become inapt, you are assigning someone to take care of your affairs. Now,
exactly.
What happens all of a sudden, let's say you do become inapt for whatever reason, an accident, a stroke, dementia, and you don't have one. What do people do in those cases?
Yeah, so that's when we would pursue a tutorship. So if you haven't had a chance to fill out a protection mandate for yourself, we automatically apply for a tutorship, which also goes to the courts, and that is how we activate certain people and make them responsible to make decisions on your behalf when you're incapable.
All right, so always best to get that protection mandate done. Always encourage. Tutorship is there as a backup. It is a little more complicated and bureaucratic, but we have a system in Quebec that if you don't have that protection mandate, we go the tutorship route, but just just avoid a lot of problems and get a protection mandate done. Now, there is a term that's sometimes a confusing term called homologation. So what is the process of homologating, which means executing a protection mandate?
That's it. So homologating is to activate your protection mandate. A lot of people will call us and say, well, I already have one. And you say, great, but if it's not activated, then we don't know to actually go ahead and use it. So homologating it is to activate it with the courts. So usually somebody will then go with a notary and apply to the courts to have this protection mandate homologated, which is to be activated and to start to be in space.
And that homologation requires 2 assessments, correct?
It does. So one is by us. A psychosocial assessment is done by a social worker who is registered and taught in this exact section. And the other part is by a medical doctor.
Okay, and they do a medical assessment. And I guess the concept is we want to protect the person, so this is why there's 2 very important assessments. One from a doctor for more health reasons, and from a social worker like yourself from a psychosocial perspective, and to make sure everything is legitimate and above board, and you're interviewing many
exactly.
people.
Yeah.
Talking with Stephanie Geller here on Life Unrehearsed. Stephanie is a social worker, and we're talking about the importance of protection mandates. Now, we talked about homologating a mandate. We've got the medical assessment done by a doctor. What's involved in the psychosocial assessment, which is done by a social worker?
Yeah, so that's a very different assessment. It's about 13 to 16 pages, and that's where a social worker will go and meet the person that is, you're applying for a protection mandate, and we'll ask certain questions like, what was your past like? What type of help have you tried to access? What type of things have you done? And we're going to kind of get a good rounded picture of what their life has been up until now.
All right. Now, you're interviewing the person, okay? This is the protection mandate, who has said probably years ago, if ever I become inapt. Now, you're interviewing that person, but who else has to get it interviewed in a psychosocial assessment?
Yeah, so of course the people that you've named. So if you've named somebody for your person, which is your medical care, and if you've named somebody for your property or finances, those are definitely people. We also want to sometimes ask other people. So for example, if someone's in a nursing home, we might go to the nursing station and ask if there's somebody who is assigned to the person that we can ask as a non-biased opinion as well.
And I believe all children of the person must get interviewed as well.
Family members, definitely. Substitutes that are named as people that are responsible have to be named, and they need to be interviewed, definitely. And anyone who's really in their circle, we really want to get a well-rounded picture.
Which is exactly the goal of the psychosocial assessment, so that the person who is asking is being protected at the end of the day here. And so what questions can be, you talked about some for the person being interviewed. What about for family members? What type of questions are you asking family members?
So we want to get an idea of what type of help have they provided? What have they tried to access? What has worked and what hasn't? We want to get a good picture of that. And really what we're doing is the person who is now possibly inapt, we're trying to safeguard their wishes. We're really trying to make sure that they're really, taken care of, and that the right people are in place for that person.
Right, listening to Life Unrehearsed, Matt Del Vecchio here. We're talking about protection mandates with social worker Stephanie Geller. All right, now you've done the assessments, so the family has done the assessments, the medical is done, the psychosocial is done. What happens after these assessments are done, and who usually presents to the courts?
Right. So it is usually a notary in Quebec, and what happens is all of the original forms need to go back to the notary, because these are the papers that need to be submitted to the courts. And it's almost like everything is time-stamped. So, for example, a lot of people call and say, well, I had a medical done a few years ago, and we say, well, that's great, but it's only active for 6 months, and that's something a lot of people didn't know. But once all of the papers are given into the courts or to the notary, they submit to the courts, and they'll kind of get a proof, if you will, and then it sits for a while until judgment happens.
And that judgment, people are a little surprised. Even if you have to sell a house, for example, and one of the two of a couple is considered inapt, you probably won't be able to sell that house. And this is why we're seeing more and more homologation of protection mandates. But it's not an overnight thing. After all the assessments are done and the notary processes the paperwork, now you're waiting for a judgment. This isn't a 2-week thing, right?
No,
I think we're looking anywhere from 6, 7, 9, 10 months up to a year.
That's it. Once the application goes into the courts, you kind of get like a number, if you will, but then it could sit for 6 to 8, even longer than that, months until a judge is actually able to render a decision.
Yeah. It is. It does take a lot longer than people think. Stephanie, very, very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
How can our listeners get a hold of you?
Best way is to really get in touch with our website, and that would be lianasservices.com.
LIANAS services.com. All right, Stephanie, thanks for coming in here on a
you.
Sunday. Brought your son along with you as well, and Jordan enjoying the show, and really appreciate you taking a little time.